What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. It's kind of weird getting enthusiastic about an intro. Yeah, I have to do some laps around the block in order to be like, yeah, get pumped. Listen to this episode. Woo! The guest this week is Danny Nash from the band Departures from Scotland. That's a terrible accent, and I won't act like I'm good at it. This is part of the You Need to Know About This Band series. I'll be doing them occasionally where it's like, you may not know this band or the person behind the band, but they either have a really interesting story or you need to know about this band. And fortunately, Departures is both of them. Danny has a really compelling story, and the band is absolutely incredible. So check them out. Anyways, propertyofzach.com. They also agree with me about Departures. Zach loves this record and has featured the band occasionally, done some interviews with them if I'm not mistaken. But go to propertyofzach.com. Visit there for all the latest in music news. I would say gossip, but not really. They report on stuff. They're very on top of it, so it may seem like they're gossiping, but they're not. They check their shit out. So yeah, propertyofzach.com. We love them as a partner and exciting. Go visit the website, 100wordspodcast.com. From there, you can see all of the episodes, not to mention all of the other random fun stuff that I post in between shows, usually like movies, music, recommendations of that nature. So check it out because people have been corresponding with me on that via the Ask Anything feature on Tumblr. So it's been cool, and I enjoy that experience. Also, if you're feeling ever so generous, go to the iTunes store, type in 100 Words Podcast, and review the show. Drop some stars, drop some sentences, whatever you feel at that very moment. I would appreciate that because I do look into it, and I really do look at those comments and go like, okay, I see what that person doesn't like. I'm sorry the Skype interviews aren't the best thing in the world, but they make do. So anyways, do that, and I really, really do appreciate all the time that you put into that. Also, shout out to our editor, Tom Richfield. I'll be hanging out with him. Like when this episode is posted, he'll be in the States and we'll be hanging out, and I enjoy that. Okay, I got to talk about something that has been on my mind for a while, because what I do is I when I get these ideas in my head as far as like, okay, shit to talk about that I think other people may find interesting, or it may bother them, or it may challenge them, whatever, I write it down. I have a little program on my phone that goes, well, that's me typing. I write it down, and then that way I revisit it later. But I wrote this down, months ago, and I just haven't got around to speaking about it until now. Anybody that takes part in social networking has noticed and will continue to notice that there are people who I would like to call, and I would agree that most other people would call them the same thing, internet famous, where it's like these people have thousands and thousands of followers on whatever social platform they decide to quote unquote dominate, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, and obviously going back even further, MySpace. And you kind of look at why these people are pushing themselves. And to me, I don't know, it just kind of blows my mind. I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't care about how many followers or people that are paying attention to what I'm doing. Do I promote myself constantly in regards to, hey, give me some more followers. Let's do Follow Fridays. Let's trade back. Here's some, self-portraits of me. There's just so much stuff that we as normal humans don't do. I don't know why looking at certain people, and I'm not going to name names, you probably know a person down the street from your house that is that. This can speak to our culture in general as far as people that are famous for not really doing anything. But you can obviously boil it down to a more microcosm, our music scene level. Why are these people, known? It's not like they've necessarily done anything awesome or cool, whether it's playing in a band, whether it's creating something like a zine, a podcast, whatever. Not like those things are ultimately the coolest because those are pretty nerdy. But it's they plan parties and shit like that, which to me in and of itself, it's something you can make a living off of, but it's not something that's lasting. I don't know. I just feel very strange about it, and seeing these people that are working within the music industry and have this whole internet persona and are doing photo shoots for themselves just to post on their social networks. Something strikes me as strange. Well, it doesn't feel like something, for one, that I would ever do. And there's something about it that kind of, irks me. It's tickles me in the back of my brain. I don't support it. I mean, in the sense of like following these people and being like, yeah, those are great people who are contributing to our cultural canon. If those people bother you, let me know. And if you want to be even more sort of gossipy, we can talk privately. You can email the show and be like, yo, this person really annoys me. And I'll be like, yo, I can see what you're talking about. It could be our own little sewing circle. We could be like the nerd kids in the corner being like, look at the fucking football player. Like, that guy is so cool, but man, he's such a nerd. Like, you know, that whole sort of high school gossip stuff. You know, it's still fun to do, even though I'm way past that point. But internet famous people, it just makes you scratch my head. That's basically all I'm trying to say. Anyways, Danny Nash from Departures. He plays guitar and he just has a really compelling story. I'm going to let him tell it in his own words rather than give away the big reveal or what have you. But check it out, because I think not only will you find this interview compelling because he does have an interesting story, but the music that these dudes create is incredible. So there you go. I'll talk to you after. Get in the grip, like losing control. There's something that I think you should know. That all the scars that I can't help but show. Like the hands that grip tightly around my throat. Yeah, I was
So asking.
My first experience with you and your band. I'm older. I'm 32 years old. You know, I'm dead by all definition of most punk and hardcore kids.
You're not that much older.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's so rare. I mean, I'm sure you experience this too, where it's like you hear a band and you're just like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? Like, yeah. I remember being in the No Sleep office and Chris being like, hey, this friend of mine managed this band. Like, let's check this out, and played 21 for me. And it was like, shut up. What is this?
Oh, no way.
And it just took me to a place of like, oh, like this is what it's like to be excited about a band.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So good job. Way to be good.
Yeah, no, thanks. Just right.
Yeah, you're like, well, you know, I mean, we're awesome, so I appreciate that.
No, that's all.
Like, in listening to what you guys have done, you've been a band for what, less than 5-6 years, right?
Yeah, we started in 2007, so 6 years now.
Okay. It's really interesting to watch a band like had never heard of you prior to Teenage Haze, like going back and listening to it, you know, your previous full length and previous 7-inch, you guys sound nothing like what you do now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you should hear the stuff before that if you think that's different. It's something. So it's not a different band completely, honestly.
It's always cool to see that. You can see where a band is trying to like go, but then to actually be able to like jump in at a certain point and then go back and be like, this is what they were doing, you know, when they were much younger.
I mean, we started and it was just, you know, American Nightmare, No Warning, Comeback Kid, that sort of thing that we wanted to sound like.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that that's even that present in our sound at all anymore, really.
I mean, I think that just comes with age, where it's like, we want to sound like this now, or just grow up and we know how to write music now.
Yeah, it could be it, yeah. I mean, I think it goes a lot with what we listen to as well, and it's just not, I mean, hardly any of us even listen to much hardcore anymore. Like, I think it just comes with getting older.
You can't listen to yelling, you know, 7 hours a day.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's funny because you'll still always view yourself as like a hardcore kid. Like, I mean, I guess the same could be said about, you know, if you get into, you know, Sisters of Mercy or whatever, and like you're a goth kid. I don't know if those kids, you know, when they're, you know, whatever, late 20s, early 30s, if they view themselves as like a goth kid.
But I guess, I mean, you get to a certain age and then you sort of stay that person, I think. I say this, like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, well, I don't listen to as much hardcore anymore, but at the same time, we're still writing it and we're still playing it. We're still playing music that's filled with yelling, as you said.
Yeah. What city do you actually reside in now? Glasgow. And you have to say it like that. Glasgow.
Sorry. Glasgow.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, you can say it like us Americans do. Glasgow.
Yeah, not Glasgow, I'm saying right now, yeah.
I mean, that's hard to be a band in Glasgow.
Oh, yeah.
You're on an island.
We are on an island in the middle of nowhere, that's right. Even by our standards, we're like kind of far up from everything else, you know.
You're in like the northern part of the city?
Just in terms of the UK, like we're far away from
right.
We have friends' bands that are from even further up north, and it's even worse for them. But
yeah, is that so? Were you born and raised in Scotland?
No, I was born in Poole in Dorset, which is like the very south coast of England. My whole family are from there. Most of them still live there. Like my sister moved back down recently, but it's just me and my mum up here now. But we moved up here when I was 2, just because of my dad's work. I think that was why we moved up. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in a really small town called Falkirk, sort of halfway between Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Okay. What was your family structure like? Like you said, you have a sister, and what was your, mom and dad doing at the time for work?
Well, my dad worked. I think he's an electrician. Like that's his like trade. I think he worked for a. It was like a company that supplied like medical beds to hospitals. That was what he worked for. I mean, I don't know if he worked on them or I think he just delivered them or whatever. My mum was just a housewife at the time when we moved up.
So it's just you and your sister?
Oh no, I've got a big sister and a little sister.
Okay, well, yeah, you can understand why she had to stay home to take care of 3 kids.
Yeah, we had 3 kids. Yeah, so that's
But essentially, your formative years were in Glasgow, or I mean, in the smaller city, like you said, in Scotland.
Yeah, in Falkirk. Yeah, definitely.
That's obviously so far removed from what I've ever experienced in my life. So it's like, it sounds like a cliched question, but like, what was that like? Was it like a rural farm community, or like paint a picture for me?
Well, okay, right. Well, I say I grew up in a town called Falkirk. I actually grew up in a village near that town called Falkirk, which is, if you picture Scotland and you're seeing like fields and sheep everywhere, it was pretty much that. At the back of my house there was just a field filled with sheep. That was where I lived.
It's crazy. Like here in the States, like they picture Midwest living. Like that's hard for people that live in New York or Philadelphia or LA to picture. But then like what you've experienced is like more removed from anything. You see these characters in a movie.
Yeah. I can imagine. Like it's probably similar to how I sort of picture your upbringing. Like it's so different that you might not be able to. Yeah, I guess it's a completely different country. It's a different landscape completely.
You lived in such a rural community. Like, was it one of those things like as you started to experience larger cities, was it like, whoa, holy shit, what is this?
Well, yeah, I remember I had a friend called Ian, like, who I actually lived with pretty much since I moved through to the city. Like, he was my flatmate, like, up until recently. And he was the guy that was like, he sort of knew about everything. He knew about all the cool bands. He knew about, he always would make me come through to Glasgow or Edinburgh with him. I remember just walking around and he was like, he kept looking up at all the buildings, like the tall buildings, because I wasn't used to it. So I go back to Falkirk now, and I'm like, everything is so small. Like, because my mum still lives there, so I go back through occasionally. And I'm like, even this like main high street that I remember being huge it's just small. Like everything's miniature.
Yeah. How many people lived in the village?
Well, in the village, like a couple of, kind of been over 1,000. It must have been a few hundred. Like it was really small.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then like there was a couple more villages before you got to that town. And it's not tiny, but it's not big.
As you were kind of growing up and you started to go to, what do you guys call high school over there? Do you call it secondary school or?
Well, I call it high school.
Oh, you call it high school. Okay. So as you started to, grow up and go to high school, did the world open up for you at all? Or was it one of those things where it's still we're in the same sense of smaller community and, sort of rural living?
Yeah, well, to a degree. I mean, it was until I was kind of just the same as I always was until about like year 3 at school, where this guy called Alan like joined our school. He'd come from another school and he was like this like goth, and like no one had ever seen anything like it like in our school at all. There was no one like that in our school. Like came in wearing like Korn t-shirt and like had like piercings and stuff and wore like baggy jeans and shit like that. And until that point I was the same. Then I sort of became friends with him. I don't even know how I became friends with him. Like I've always played like sort of instruments and stuff, and he was a drummer, and that was how I sort of started talking to him. And like he sort of changed like a lot, I think, in that respect.
Everybody looked at him like, who is this freak? You kind of looked at him like, hey, this guy may be onto something.
It should have been like that, but it was kind of like everyone I think was a bit taken aback by it, and he was pretty cool, like in our school, like which is unusual. I think it might have just been exclusive to where I went.
I remember an experience similar to that. Like there was this really small town in Kentucky. It's called Ashland, Kentucky. For whatever reason, my friend in junior high and I think freshman year of high school, he would always go back there and visit his grandma because she lived there. I think this was like maybe I was like 12, 13, maybe a little bit older. Going back there, for whatever reason, we went to like the high school that one day because I guess my friend's cousin went there or whatever. And so at the time we were like just starting to get into like No Effects and Lagwagon. So, we had like the typical sort of surfer, punk hair or whatever. So, we looked out of place in a small town, but it was so strange because we walked into the high school and people totally were just like, who are these guys? These guys are incredible. Like, and we were there for like an hour. We had girls come up to us and be like, hey, do you want to hang out later? And it's like, who are you? What?
Yeah, it's a pretty similar thing, I think. Like, I remember he came in one day, like, it had like white contacts in, like that make like the coloured bit of your eyes white. He was wearing that and a Slipknot t-shirt with like, it had like the lyrics to one that's like the chorus is like, fuck it all, fuck this. Like, I had like the word fuck on it about 5 times. Like, I think he got into trouble, and then obviously instantly he was just incredibly cool because of that.
Dude, that's incredible. Everybody was kind of like, oh, this guy's edgy and cool. And you mentioned that you had played instruments before. Was your family musical, or how did that sort of enter your life?
Yeah, my dad plays guitar.
Oh, okay. So he kind of ushered you into that?
Kind of not. Like, I mean, I was always more interested in drumming. Like, I remember, like, probably about 5 or like even younger than that, maybe I just drummed on everything. I used to get in trouble at school for drumming on everything. I remember my mum and dad bought me a like toy drum kit when I was about 6 or something, and I broke it like the first time I used it because I was playing it like an actual drum kit. I remember that. But there was one year my parents were like sort of quite strict, like Christians. That's quite a sort of strict, quite Christian upbringing. I had to go to church every week, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Up until a certain age, anyway. And I got sent to this like camp, like Christian camp thing. It was like, the worst time. I remember getting home in the worst mood. And they bought me an actual drum kit. This was when I was about 12, I think. And that was like, I remember that was like mind blowing. And I was sort of obsessed with drumming for a while. But then my dad was quite funny about letting me play his guitar. And then like one day he let me play it, and that was it. From then on, I was like, nah, I'm not bothered about drums anymore.
You're like, the drum kit's there's way too much going on.
Pretty much. I mean, the first ever band I was in was with like a group of friends from that small village. We used to practice at like this village hall that was there, and I played drums for them. But all we did was like covers of like Oasis, Jimi Hendrix, and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I reached the point where I wasn't bothered about drums anymore. I haven't really ever played them since.
Usually the first instrument you kind of latch on to, that's like what you do. But you're like, nah.
No, it's a bit weird. Like, it's quite unusual, I think. I do miss drums sometimes. Like, even now, I'm like, oh, I kind of miss.
Yeah. Because I didn't even really think about Scotland in general as far as the sort of religious atmosphere. But so your parents were pretty like strict. Like, what sort of denomination as far as Christianity was concerned?
It wasn't like overly strict, but denomination of Christianity.
I mean, like, because there's like Lutheranism, and was it just kind of the sort of run of the mill Christianity?
Yeah, it was just sort of just straight up Christian. Like, I'm sure my mum could talk to you for hours about specifically what she might be, but I don't want to say
Yeah.
Like over here, there's just sort of, you have like Protestant Christians sort of thing, and you have Catholics, and that's all I know of it anyway. Yeah, well, I mean, my mum right now goes to a church, and it's a really small group of people. They might consider themselves not as mainstream as, the main ones. I don't know.
I'm just curious because it's one of those things that each region in the world has such a strong preference to one religion. And so it never occurs to me that it's like, oh yeah, Scotland, like that would probably be a pretty heavy religious background in that country as well.
Not so much. I mean, I didn't really enjoy church. Like, I remember I just got dragged to it like every week. I hated it. It's not because of anything like to do with the religion. I was a kid and it was boring. Yeah, it was Sunday. Like, it's 2 days off from school and I have to go there in the morning.
Yeah, it's so funny because the whole idea of parents forcing their kids to do stuff, no matter what it is, whether it's music, religion, anything. It's like when you're forcing someone to do something, they're eventually going to get to that point where it's like, you know what? I don't want to do this. Why are you making me do this?
Maybe I'm maybe younger, maybe 14 maybe 13 when I was just stopped going to just my mum didn't make me anymore.
I can't do this anymore. I can't drag Danny.
The only memory I have is just sitting there so bored, trying to distract myself with anything available. My sister used to bring like toys, and it was just like the girliest sort of toys that were like Polly Pocket or something, or Barbie or something. I used to just play with them just for something to do.
Something to pay attention to besides this. And so that kid came to your school, and by that time you had already been into music. The choices for the music that you could get into were pretty limited because obviously, I mean, you were getting into this stuff still when the internet was kind of young and not as easily accessible as it is now.
Yeah, I don't think I even had internet then. Like, we didn't get it till quite late because where I lived, you couldn't even get broadband. Like, you can only get dial-up.
Right.
I think that sounds like burned into everyone's brains forever. Anyone that was there. I briefly had cable TV, and where I lived, like it was basically like sort of mainstream, just pop indie stuff. The more alternative kids that were in town that I wasn't like. I remember there was this like one place where they all hung out behind a shopping centre in town, but I wasn't really friends with them at this point. From what I can remember now, it's you either liked like punk or like punk slash pop punk.
Mm-hmm.
So like No FX, Less Than Jake, that sort of thing, or like Blink-182, Offspring, etc. Either that or you like new metal, and that was it. I would say that I was definitely into new metal, but I also like the first CD I ever bought myself was Blink-182's Enema of the State.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty much that. Yeah, it was like if you're alternative, you like either those punk bands or these new metal bands. There was no like hardcore or anything really.
You were in such a small community that it's hard to access that.
I didn't really hit us at all. Like, it's so embarrassing. Like, I remember like seeing, Nookie, the song Nookie by Limp Bizkit.
Of course.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on TV for the first time, and like obviously it was just like mind blowing for me. I was just like, that's the heaviest thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah. Well,
to find out what that is now.
Dude, I was the same way when I heard, Korn's Blind for the first time. Yeah. All you have to do is like, whatever age you find something at, that's when it's just like, oh my God, of course this is the heaviest thing ever. There's literally nothing heavier than this.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt about that song. I remember just being, and I didn't know who it was at the time because it was just a clip. I was like, I need to find out what that was. That was incredible.
Yeah, I got to find out what this is immediately.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And like, I think I liked Significant Other before that guy joined my school. But then I remember him, like, we were in music class one day and he was like, oh, have you heard this band called Papa Roach? Like, you remember that?
Yeah.
It shows us a CD and I was like, no, I've never heard of this. What's this? That sounds horrible and like amazing. Like, went and bought that. I was like really into them. So I was basically, like, just all of the sort of main, like, like sort of mainstream new metal bands. I love them, like, when I was around like 14, 15.
Right. Well, and you probably didn't see any live music, like a concert, until you were much older, right? Or when was the first experience you had from that? The
first show I ever went to see, and it's such a weird thing because pretty much everyone from Scotland that is my age, the first show was this show. It was the Offspring at this like huge like sort of arena venue in Glasgow when I think I was about 2001 maybe or 2002. I was quite young. I remember I got my mum's friend took me to it because like I loved that band as well at the time. I remember me and my friend going through like a magazine just looking for shows that we could go to that were under 18.
Uh-huh.
Because all of a sudden it was like I love going to shows. I've only ever been to one, but I love it. I think the second gig I ever went to was do you remember a band called Boy Hits Car? I went to see them. I'd never heard them before, but it was just the only show that was under 18 that was coming that I could go.
Yeah, well, you were just, at that time, you were just like, okay, I know that I like the idea of watching people play music. I'll take anything. You're starved for that experience rather than being discerning on like, oh, I'm only going to go to this show because I know I like this band already.
Yeah.
It's kind of an awesome place to be because there may have been stuff that you never would have watched if you were raised in a more metropolitan area.
I can't think of like the sort of mentality I had at the time, but it was just, we just need to go to some shows, like just because that one was amazing, so let's go see more. Doesn't matter who.
Oh yeah, you get to a point where you're just like, oh, there's so many shows, I can't go to this, I can't go to that, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What was the introduction in regards to kind of, the punk hardcore type stuff that obviously has led your life to where you're at now?
Yeah, well, my friend Ian who I talked about, the guy I live with, like, it was him pretty much, he always sort of knew more of, I don't even know how. He didn't have the internet. He must have, I think he read, like, American magazines a lot, like, he read, like, Big Cheese and magazines like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously maybe featured this stuff more, I don't know. He was into like Hatebreed and like Earth Crisis and bands like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of my introduction to it. I wasn't really that bothered about it until a load of a few of my friends, James, who's the singer of Departures, they started a hardcore band, like, because they were all properly into it, like, before I was, and I ended up joining that band, and that was sort of how I properly got into it. Like, you know, it was I've joined the hardcore band without actually listening to much hardcore. After that point, you know, obviously I got introduced to a lot of bands through that band.
It's interesting because it's like so many people have the experience of just like having all of this stuff at their fingertips, where it's like, you know, you just by location and proximity to said music, it was difficult for you to access, and then all of a sudden once you had a little way in, it was like, oh wow, here's this whole world.
Yeah, I mean, being from where we were from, it's really hard to even be aware of this stuff. You know, like, I didn't know any of this was going on, and it turns out it'd been going on for a long time, and we just didn't.
Yeah, you're like, oh, what's under here? Holy shit, this whole thing.
Pretty much, yeah. Like that was it. When you know, American Nightmare, one of my favorite hardcore bands, is still are. I feel like people ask me, you know, name some favorite hardcore bands, they'd be in there, because there weren't many hardcore bands like playing actual hardcore around. It was like mostly metalcore ish stuff. We were one of the, like, not that many doing it. We got offered a lot of shows, and like some of the shows we played, and I think of them, I'm like, like, that's ridiculous. Like, I'd love to go and see that show now. We once played with the lineup was us, a few of our friends' bands on it, and then Champion and Comeback Kid were headlining. I'd love to see that again. Like,
you're like, oh, well, I think that happens with everybody. There are times where it's like you see a show when you were younger, and it's like, oh, I would appreciate it so much more now.
Yeah. There was quite a lot of them. I mean, we played like The Promise and bands like that.
Departures has been around for, like you said, 6 years. But what was the first band? Like, what was the sort of, you know, besides the cover band that you were obviously doing?
Okay, right. I was in the band that I joined with that guy that joined my school. We were we were called Anger of the Victim.
Oh, that's great. That's a perfect name. I love the band names where you're able to predict what the band sounds like without even hearing them, and that's totally like that.
Yeah, just it was a new metal. It was a new metal band.
Oh, weird! I never would have guessed. That's awesome, though. Yeah. So that was, once you played a show, was it one of those things where you were like, I need to continue to figure out ways to do this, or was it like, oh, this is just kind of fun?
I loved it. I still do. I mean, but obviously not to the same degree that you, when you first do it and you're like, this is amazing. Like, at a show, it doesn't matter where it is, just playing in front of some people watching your band. Doesn't matter who.
Because, yes, you know, you hear certain people who it's like, they play one show and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm destined to live on the stage.
Possibly. I mean, after I was in that band, I got offered to join another band, just from Glasgow, and they were getting like all the sort of cool shows and like playing tours with sort of pretty big bands. And I think it was at that point when I joined that band that I was sort of like, you know, maybe this is something I could do. And I think I was in college at the time. I think I like quit college to just because this band practiced like 3 or 4 times a week through in Glasgow, so I had to just be through all the time to do that.
I'm sure your parents were pretty excited about that.
She has always been ridiculously supportive of me, like regardless of what it is, to be honest.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, like, in fact, my mum was mum was in hospital at the time. I think it was like asthma or something. Oh yeah, I've been asked to join this like band, but I mean, it's a real band, but I have to not go to college anymore because I have to practice all the time and be in Glasgow.
So you yeah, told her when she was in the hospital.
I know, what was I doing? What was I playing at?
Dude, that's incredible. That speaks to you. I mean, youth in general.
Well, maybe that gives you an idea of how excited I was about it. I was very excited.
I got to get this out immediately. I don't care, Mom. I got to do this.
It's just sort of silly looking back now, but like, I was really excited. Like, you know, the band, that Anger of the Victim band, we played with this band a couple of times, and every time we were just like, fuck, that band's just made every other band look shit. Like, what's the point? Yeah, it was a bit like that. They were really good at the time.
What was that band's name?
7 Stone Lighter. I didn't have anything to do with that.
That's a very British name, though. 7 Stone Lighter.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like there was sort of Glassjaw, like emo-y type stuff.
Or maybe you can reference 100 Reasons.
And the Beatles, oh no, I wouldn't know well. You ask them what they were into at the time, they just all go Glassjaw. It was just similar Glassjaw.
It was always so interesting to me just because I did pay attention to music so closely, where it's like there are certain bands in the UK that obviously like are gigantic, but no one knows who they are over here. And it's just like I could mention that name to 400 people here and not one person would know. Or they may be like, oh, maybe I've heard of them. It's like, oh my.
That's weird because I just see when you said it, I just assumed that everyone knew who they were over there as well.
Yeah, no one. Probably survey like 10,000 people and you'd probably get like maybe 2 people that have heard of them.
It's insane. I remember I saw 100 Reasons about 15 times just because they supported every band.
They were the band that you take on tour forever. You go to the UK, you got to play with 100 Reasons.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Like you said, you were going to college and then you dropped out. What were you studying at the time?
Just some useless courses like music and audio technology. You know what I mean? I was just, anything music, that'll do. I was just doing music. I'm good at music, that's what I know.
Yeah, you were just killing time, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I know a few people that did that course, and it was at college in Falkirk, that town, including the singer of Departures, James. He did it as well. And all these people that have done that course have just like never used it in any way in their life.
You know, whenever the professor is teaching the class, just be like, all right, I know you're not going to use this, so...
Yeah. Yeah, this is all pretty much superfluous information. Like, you're just here because you needed something to do with your time. I mean, there was a lot of just rubbish. It was just like the workings of an XLR cable, microphones and stuff like that. Like, just stuff I was not interested in. There was a small part of it that was about actual music, production, like recording music. That was interesting, but that was about it. The guy that took us for that was just, I mean, he was as well. I don't know how he got that job. Like, I mean, it's like something out of a sitcom. Like, he'd written theme tune for some kids' TV show, and he just talked about that every class. He spent the class talking about that every single time.
He was like, "You may know me from this."
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. And he'd talk about how all you need to do is make just the one, just make one theme tune, sell it. That's you sorted.
So basically, he's like a shittier version of the actor Hugh Grant in the movie About a Boy.
Yeah, pretty much a lot shittier.
So yeah, you were killing time. You basically, were excited to play in this band, so you quit college. Did the band tour at all? The band play outside of Scotland at all?
We did some really big shows. I don't know how we did it, and it's one of those things that because I was so young that I just didn't appreciate what was happening. Like, that band had like a management company that just paid for everything, like paid for all their gear and stuff. Like,
oh wow!
Yeah, I know. Like, I've never had that since either. Like, it's just that was a one-off with that band at the time.
I love that you get this totally like posh experience, and then but you never knew anything different, and then now that you have to do a lot of stuff on your own, you're like, oh shit.
I didn't appreciate it in any way because it was just like, oh, is this not just what happens with bands? Like, I don't know. I don't know any better. And then if that happened now, it'd be like unbelievable because I know how it works now. Just they had that, and did some like really big. We supported Newfound Glory once at a place called the Barrowlands, which is like a lot. I mean, that's about 2,000, 3,000 people, and that's big. But then we did a tour which was the lineup was Funeral for a Friend headline and Killswitch Engage. They used Story of the Year on it. It was all these colossal bands, and it was like we played like the SECC, which is like the biggest venue in Glasgow, pretty much. We had like 8,000-9,000 people, and we did like Cardiff Arena in Wales, which is like 10,000 people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, it was only those couple of shows that it was like I always forget that even happened. You know what I mean? I never really tell anyone about it because I just forget it happened because I think it was 19 or I was 18 or 19 at the time.
You were just kind of, like you said, you joined this band. You were kind of along for the ride. And
actually, I hadn't done any work to get them where they were.
Right. So it's interesting that you had this experience of playing in front of fucking massive amounts of people, and then obviously getting to a point of where you are playing in front of audiences that are, 100 people or less. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's where we are now. Definitely.
Right. It was funny because as I was, just doing some simple, further research on you guys, I didn't even know, like, in just seeing that alternative press, little blurb where it's like, you mentioned obviously the battle that you had with cancer, and I was like, oh, I mean, I knew that it was out there, but I didn't know that it ever was like talked about, and so the fact that you went through that also gives you the perspective of where you can play in front of 10,000 people and not appreciate it, but then play in front of 100 people and really appreciate it.
Basically, we had to do a phone interview for that. It was like the 100 bands feature that they had that month.
Right.
One of the departures needed to do a phone interview, and like generally the interviews get sort of, it's mostly email interviews we do, passed on to me. I just end up doing them. But this day, like, because I'm the only person that works in an office in our band, I was the only person that could take the phone call at the time. But it was in December, I think, and I had my operation in January. Sorry, November. I had my operation in November, and I had, like, you know, part of my tongue cut off, so I couldn't really talk that well, and like I still struggle a bit. I mean, you wouldn't know what I sounded like before, I guess. So basically, like, when he phoned, I had to explain. I was like, look, if I sound a bit, you know, I was like lisping quite badly and stuff, I was like, you know, that's why, you know, I had an operation recently and that. And, you know, obviously straight away the guy was like, oh really, you had surgery? Oh yeah, let's talk about that then. Yeah, come on, let's have it.
That's like an angle to the story. Yeah.
So that, you know, I don't. As soon as I hung up the phone after being talking, I was like, I don't know if I wanted to talk about that. I mean, I don't mind talking about it, but I don't want it to seem like, you know, I'm trying to make it a thing, because I'm 100% not. Like, it's not like that.
Well, I could totally understand where you're coming from, because it's like, this isn't an angle. This isn't something that was like a strategic ploy. I'm like, all right, yeah, Danny's going to go out there and start talking about how he fought cancer and won. And now Departures is going to be known as the band that killed cancer. Like, yeah, you don't want that as your narrative.
No, not at all. No, like, I mean, it just sort of happened, and I was like, well, whatever. Like, instantly, I think, you know what, like, someone reads that and goes, oh, you know, he's just trying to, you know, he might be using that. But like, at the same time, I'm like, well, I went through it, so who cares?
It's part of what makes you you.
I think it's a thing that happened to me, so I can talk about it.
Right. Would you mind sharing the details in regards to that? There's not much out there from that perspective. Like you said, you had part of your tongue removed. So, I mean, was it cancer of the mouth? Like, what happened?
Well, basically what happened was, it was while we were down recording Teenage Haze, like, for a while I'd noticed, I thought I had just an ulcer. Like, occasionally I smoked at the time, so I used to get ulcers every now and then. I remember at that point I was like, oh, this has been here for quite a long time, and it won't go away, and it's starting to get really sore. And I remember, like, just trying to eat something hot. And we got back from that, and I went to work. One day I was just like, I think it just got so painful. I was like, right, I felt like such a dick. Like, it was the most stupid phone call I ever made. Cause I say most stupid, it was one of the most important, I guess. But at the same time, I phoned my boss because he wasn't in at the time, and I was like, I think I need to go to the doctor. And he was like, all right, what? And I was like, well, my tongue hurts. And he was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, right, your tongue hurts and it just won't stop, and it's bizarre. And he was like, your tongue hurts? And I was like, yep, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I know I sound a bit daft. And he was like, well, you know, you sort it out, go for it. So I went through it and spoke to my doctor, and I remember thinking, like, she looked a bit like confused by it, like it wasn't the usual sort of thing. But then she just went, I'll prescribe you some antibiotics. But like, and which has happened to me before, because I've had like throat infections or whatever, and I get prescribed antibiotics. But this time she went, you know, but I want to see you again in 10 days. And I was like, okay. I didn't think anything of it, obviously, at the time. I just thought, well, antibiotics will get rid of it. It's just a stupid infection thing. I took them, obviously nothing happened, like, it just didn't do anything. I went back, she prescribed me some more, and then nothing happened. I went back and she referred me to the hospital to see, you know, someone that specialised in this area. And that was sort of how it began.
What was the actual diagnosis you had? I mean, I don't know, cancer of the mouth? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It's just oral cancer. There's a proper name for it, but I don't remember.
Was it directly due to the smoking that you were doing?
They performed the biopsy on my tongue, and they were like, I didn't know what that was at the time, and it turned, like, you know, and they sat me in a chair, and then the guy, like, put a needle in my tongue to numb it, which is like horrifying.
Right.
Then, like, cut a bit out and diagnose it and stuff. And then I went through they had me scheduled in to go and see this doctor, you know, tell me what was up and that. And obviously the cancer had never crossed my mind at all.
No.
At that point, you know, just why would it? And I went into the room and my mum was there, not in the room with me though, and he sat down and he was like, yeah, have you got anyone with you? And I went, well, yeah, my mum's here. And she was like, well, do you want to bring her in? And I was like, no, that's okay. They went, well, I think it'd be better if someone was here. And I was like, even at that point, I don't think I was just like, whatever, okay.
Uh-huh.
So my mum came in, and then it's straight away this guy was just like, yeah, this is cancer, and I was like, oh right. I think my initial, like, my mum obviously, like, her reaction, like, properly freaked me out. She just instantly, like, just gasped and started to tear up and that, and I was like more concerned with that than what I'd just been told. I think.
Sure.
All right, like
the way that the human brain functions, it's like, okay, I can't process cancer, but I can process me trying to console my mom.
Yeah, that must have been how it was. Well, at the time, I didn't know anything about cancer. Because no one in my family's ever had it. Like, my parents never had it, grandparents never had it. After I'd sort of taken it in for a minute or two, I was just like, right, so am I gonna die? Like, is that gonna happen? Like, I'm in 6 months, will I be dead? Is that it?
Like, what was his prognosis? Was he like, okay, you've got a year to live, or is this like, if we treat it right away, we'll be okay?
It was really early, so they couldn't really say much. Like, he just sort of went, there's good news and bad news. Bad news is what you've got is not a good cancer to have. I was like, okay, like there is a good cancer, but
right, yeah. Here's the best cancer you can possibly have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he was like, it's not a good place to get it, in terms, relatively, but we can treat it, and then he went on for a bit about what the treatment was, what it might entail, blasted with information, and he told me that at the time. He was like, I'm just going to hit you with a lot of stuff here, and you might not be able to take it in, but I have to, because he does. It's his job and all that. I didn't really know what to think. It was just weird. Like, it was, leaving and driving back to the train station to come back to Glasgow was just so weird. Like, I was just sitting there like, okay.
You probably just felt like you were watching your life as opposed to living it.
Yeah, well, pretty much. I got a train back, and it was the weirdest train ride. Like, I text my girlfriend at the time, and I text James Keno, our singer, just to come and meet me. I was like, yeah, I think you guys need to come and meet me. My main concern was just, am I gonna die? Like, people die from cancer, and that's all I know. Like,
do I need to prepare for the ending, or do I need to like look past that?
Yeah, pretty much. It was weird. Like, and then obviously I met them, and it was so weird because like, I couldn't spit it out, and I remember Keno just going, "Have you got cancer?" And I went, "Yeah."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But because like I was just sitting there going, "Yeah, they told me something."
Right. You're like, I can't. I don't know.
Yeah, even just saying the word out loud, it was like, it was odd.
I presume, like they said, they caught it early. You're young. Your body's resilient. You were basically just like, all right, I'm gonna kick this. I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna just do what I can.
I got a lot of advice given me that was just useless. Like, and they told me a lot of things, because they have to tell you all the worst case scenarios and stuff. And I got told so much stuff that I just didn't need to know. But weird. I remember the doctors telling me, you're gonna wake up at like 4 a.m, being like, oh, well, why me? What have I done? Feeling like your world's ending and all that stuff. And that just never happened to me. And I was mostly like fine up until the operation. Like, I don't know, I handled it fine. I think it didn't affect me that much. I didn't even really tell anyone. Like, I told a few close friends, and that was it. I didn't like on Facebook and go, oh, cancer.
That's really true. Because I mean, obviously we live in the age of oversharing, and people will tell you about what they have for every meal. And so it's like, do you share something that's like so essentially personal, where it's like, okay, this is my battle with a disease. Like, if this is something that's going to consume my life for the next, 2 or 3 years, then obviously people will have to know. But, if this is something you can kind of contain, yeah, I never thought about it from that perspective.
Well, do you know, I didn't even think about it. Like, I just didn't do it. It never occurred to me. Like, I never felt the need to go on Facebook and like tell people,
Yeah,
like, I mean, I don't know if anyone
sure.
ever would. Like, maybe people would. Maybe that's the way they deal with it. But I didn't feel like yeah, well, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't feel like I had to at all. It was like literally like just close friends,
It's probably one of those things too, where it's just like, this is something that I'm going to deal with my trusted group of people, rather than I need support from some person I met 10 years ago in my life. It's like, that's not meaningful.
The biggest, like, the thing I was most scared of was the actual operation itself, because I've been told the details of that, and that sounded awful, and it was awful. But there was a couple of days, I'd be in work and I speak to my friend Nick, I speak to him about it and stuff, and then I don't think he even meant it. And it's like, even when I think of it now, I'm like, it's not, it's almost nothing. Like, he just said to me, I remember us being like, fuck, they're doing all this stuff, and I'm really scared. I'm scared of like how I'm gonna feel, how it's gonna feel when I actually wake up from the operation and all that. And he was just like, he said to me, if it was me, I'd just look at it as something that I have to do, like that has to happen. And that, for some reason, like
Right.
that, I thought about that the whole way up to it, and that pretty much got me through it. I don't know how, because even if I think about it now, I'm like, he's pretty much just said, just sort of default advice there, but it really helped.
You can understand. You can easily do that where you're just like, yeah, this is like me, having to show up to work on a day. I just got to do it.
It made me look at it from this perspective. This is happening. I might as well just accept that. And it's, because if I don't, then I will probably die from.
You'll be too consumed by it, and it'll defeat you.
Yeah,
and so you're all good now for all intent and purposes.
Everything went as well as it could have, given the situation. The day before I went in, I'd already been told about all this stuff that we're gonna do. The thing I was most scared of was, do you know what a tracheostomy is?
No, I don't.
Man, it's like basically they make a hole like in your sort of lower part of the front of your neck so you can breathe through it.
Okay.
And that's what it is, like breathing hole. That was the thing I was most scared of. Like that just sounded just horrible. But then the day before I went in, because I had to just stay overnight in the hospital the night before. I met these, the doctor I've been dealing with the whole time, and this other guy who was also going to be like doing the surgery. And the day before they told me, so we might have to just cut your whole face open. So we have to cut your face open, or like down your cheek, or we're gonna have to like split your lip and cut down the front of your face.
Holy shit!
Yeah, think of hearing that. Already, I was getting told, they did have to cut open like my neck itself. So I've got this like pretty bad scar, like from pretty much like under my ear, like where my neck is, all the way down and then round the front of my throat. So I had that. And then they were telling me that the day before. I was like, right, cool. Actually disfigured from that.
Yeah, that's insane.
That was terrifying. And and that, it was just in case, because of where it was, they might not be able to get access. They'd have to do that. The first thing my mum told me when I woke up was, oh, they didn't have to cut your face open. It's okay. I was like, okay, cool.
You're like, oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm sure I didn't even reply. I couldn't talk at that point, but it went well. That didn't happen. The 2 weeks I was in hospital felt like forever to me, but I got better by comparison. Well, what I'm told is it's mostly older people that get what I had. There's some people that would still be, where I was 2 days in after 2 weeks. I got better, really fast. So they had to test my lymph nodes, which is like the next place it goes to from the actual initial tumor. And then I got told that was all clear, so I didn't have to get any chemotherapy or radiotherapy. So, in that respect, I was pretty lucky.
That's great. I know it sounds cliche, but I'm sure after that happens, it's one of those things where it's like water tastes a little bit better, food tastes a little bit better. And did you feel that difference?
To take what you just, that sort of metaphor literally, I wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything for 10 days. You can't imagine what it was like the first time they told me that I could, drink water. I was drinking water and I was almost in tears just from drinking a glass of water.
That's incredible.
Oh, God. Don't think I'll ever forget that sip of water that I was able to take.
Obviously, congratulations are in order. I mean, that's a pretty amazing feat. I mean, like you said, you didn't do anything, you just showed up, but I mean, you mentally prepared yourself to not be in a place where you would be able to. You see that happen.